So let me introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Mengqi Zhou, and I'm based in the School of Linguistic, Speech and Communication Sciences. And our topic today is bilingual child language development. Okay, so I have my email address here, just in case if you would like to, communicate with me more after the class. So I put my email address here. Okay. So I believe bilingual or bilingualism is not an unfamiliar term. So I actually would like to ask you a question first. So would you consider yourself to be bilingual? I don't think.
Yes, yes, maybe. Because maybe we learned English in the first early years in our life, in the early childhood. So yes, we could be considered as bilingual.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. You mentioned early childhood because that will be the main focus of today's session. Okay, very good. Yeah, so for today's session, so first we're going to begin our exploration of bilingual language acquisition by considering the kinds of, different situations where a child grew up with more than two languages, more than one language, sorry. And after this, we go on to explore the theories to which the languages of bilingual children are integrated or separate. So I think if you acquire or if you learn English since early childhood, you might have, some experience to share or, some observation like to share with us. And then we will focus on the factors that makes for success in bilingualism. So what factors might influence children's bilingual acquisition more, or some they don't have that much impact. And finally, if we have time, we could discuss the advantages and disadvantages of being bilingual in general. So for the last discussion, we would probably extend the scope a little bit from the bilingual child language development, especially at the early childhood, to maybe in their later stage of their life, and even in adulthood. I believe we will have a lot of to say on that topic. Okay, so and then. So first, I have some thoughts or some statements here about bilingualism. So, that's children. The first one, that children will get confused when they're exposed to two or more languages. The second one, that bilingualism slows down children's language development. And then the last one, that they may struggle at school. So I'm a little bit curious here. I would like to know your thoughts on these three statements on bilingualism. So do you think that they are true or they're not so true?
Yes, well, I was actually having like a personal question and consultation. I need consultation in that because I hear this or these thoughts so much actually around me, because I do have an a 15-month-old child, and I'm really I don't know which approach actually to follow with him. Is it to talk to him in English, like in part of a day, and with specific stories and something like that, in addition to Arabic, which will be the dominant language, or what should I do exactly? So this is very confusing for me personally.
Yeah, so we are going to actually talk about different approaches that parents actually taking, the decisions that they made, which language they're speaking to their children. And we're going to talk about some different cases, with different results from the studies. And maybe we could discuss a little bit about your questions in details more at the second half of our class. What do you think? Because at that time, then we will see, maybe there are some successful cases and some cases that didn't really work very well. Because you said like you have a 15 months child, right? So have you observed any problems about your child's language development, like right now, like at this stage?
Like, are you asking me this question?
Sorry.
Yes. Well, actually, for me, I don't know, because my child is still as I told you, he's 15 months old, so he's too young to monitor any kind of language development now. He is in the stage of producing some sounds and very simple words, like mama, papa, and so on and so forth. But this is very simple, and it's too early to actually monitor any kind of difficulty in the language development.
Yeah.
But what I do is the following, actually, is that I talk to him all the time in Arabic, in the Egyptian colloquial Arabic. And I allocate a specific period of time, specific time in the day, a specific place, to have a bedtime story in English, and another time actually to learn German for me and him. So both of us do this together, actually. Yes, I try to make this binded to time and a place, for the second and the third language. But the main language which is the Egyptian colloquial Arabic, is every day and all over the day and all over the place and so on.
Yeah, so Arabic would be the dominant language in your home and also in the society, right? When you're, yeah. So I would say, for now, I would say at the early stage, as you just said, because your child is still very young, and of course, because you said he already can produce some words, even though it's basic words, but that could be a sign that there is actually no delay on that, because 50 months is not an old and a late stage for a child, and even for a bilingual child, to produce words, because it's not rare. It's actually happened quite often, and I have witnessed that for myself as well, for my students, that they actually, for bilingual children, it is 15 months. So for bilingual children, they could not have a word, not produce their first word until age of 2, and it is common. It is not a delay. So in terms of how to do it, we could discuss it in our class later. Actually, I have it on my slide for the language use at home. Yeah, I see someone raised hand.
Yes, hello, man.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, this is Dina Awazid, and I would really like to comment on the third thought upon bilingualism, which says that kids might struggle at school during their educational process. So I have two ideas to say about this. The first is that children, when they grow up having bilingual experience in education, they have difficulties. When we get to the idea of transferring linguistic concepts like sound systems, vocabulary, and grammatical structures.
Yeah.
So that's based on the linguistic level, or the linguistic conceptualization. And the rules of a target language can contradict the rules of the mother language itself. When we have in Egypt Arabic as the mother tongue and English as the second language acquired at school, for the lifetime.
Yeah.
Some students have such difficulties when they get to learn English, and then the very first uh, educational stage. I mean, the age starting maybe 5 or
Mhm.
um, so we have such difficulties during learning sound, how they pronounce words, how they
Yeah.
pronounce the alphabets, and the grammatical rules, and the way they conduct conversation. For some students, it's really hard to initiate a conversation inside the class as part of the English language activities.
Yeah.
So another issue is the lack of the appropriate cultural representation
Mhm.
of the English language in the curriculum materials. Okay, so I feel that the students might have very shallow experience of the language um, when it gets to be grounded on the linguistic level, ignoring the cultural representation of the English culture.
Mhm.
Okay, and another point that is the challenges of raising bilingual child. So we have mixing languages, and
Mm.
um, some students have some preference for one language over the other.
Mhm.
So if we get to the stage of initiating a conversation, they prefer to say what they want to say in Arabic instead of English. So
Mhm.
this will hinder the opportunity for them to practice. Okay,
Yeah.
and also it's difficult for them in their in the advanced level, in the advanced stage of reading and writing. And also we might refer to the language fluency delay. I
Mm.
mean, it's really confusing for parents with the speech delays. I mean, some people, I see some people having a problem with their children. They want to push them to speak and talk, but the child is really having a problem. I don't know what kind of problem is it, but at the end of the day, they have such confusion about what to do.
Mm.
Just to help uh, their kids, anyways, whether at school or outside the framework of school education.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I think
Thank you
first
very
of all, thank
much.
you. No, first of all, I want to thank you to comment on that, especially at the school education, right? It's very difficult. I mean, at the early stage, of course, it's already complex for bilingual children to acquire language because even though they're at home, their language exposure, their language environment is comparatively simple, but they still have to, the parents might still have different choices about which language to use towards to their kids. So that can, result in very different, like a variety of language patterns at home and the environment to the children, especially not the if sorry apart from the parents, we also have siblings and other interlocutors maybe in the household, and especially at school. Of course, because school's context will be more complex, and also if, let's say, I'm not really familiar with, because basically I know nothing about the school system in your country, but I would say even though English is a language of instruction in school, uh, the Arabic will still be the dominant language, right? So maybe the English is speaked, in the classroom, but maybe the kids will choose to communicate with each other in Arabic instead of English.
Well, I'd like to comment on this part. You know
Hmm.
that Arabic is the mother tongue. Yes, we agree on that. But
Hmm.
still, we have, I would call it like a trend when we have parents who
Mm.
glorify the idea of Englishanization, if I got it right.
Mhm.
So they want to maintain English in each and every part of their kids' life.
Okay.
Okay, so we get to see that they want to ignore Arabic, although it's the dominant language of the country.
Mhm.
It's the official in each and everything. But we go after the trend of having that showy performance that my kid is able to communicate in English, and I am hysteric about pushing my kid to learn English all the time, and
Mm.
it gets to be like a disaster if he is not able to communicate, if he's not able to write a piece of writing just to express himself, you know.
Mhm.
So I get to see some people who are not who cannot perceive the idea or cannot be persuaded of the idea that learning takes time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm.
I have to accept the fact that my kid can take 1 month, for example, to learn a reading passage.
Mhm.
And if I have another kid, I'm giving you just a naive example. Actually, it's not a real example, but I mean there is what we call the individual differences between people. So I have to
Yeah.
accept the fact that learning takes time,
Mhm.
and I do not have to be showy about learning. I have to learn for myself,
From
okay,
the
to
get.
achieve communication at the end of the day.
Mm. Oh yeah, I think that's very good that you mentioned about the individual differences. As it's did like it exists like in the learning process, and it exists like in, and also it's not, you know, stable like for the development of the language. Maybe for the early stage, you will witness that the kids are willing to speak the two languages, but when they enter school, there might be a change of the dominant language, you know, in their language environment. You might feel that, oh, I didn't change anything at home, but because they enter school and their language environment changed, so they might tend to have uh, you know, the switch of the language preference. And also because of lots of reasons, you know, their friends, like what language their friends, their classmates like to use, and they tend, the kids tend to, you know, change following that as well. So and also, yeah, and also a lot of let's say maybe the teacher might play a role like in the education system as well, you know, and especially as, you know, I think it's Dina mentioned curriculum. So curriculum, sorry, I put that here, but I will leave it here. The curriculum play a role on that as well. And sometimes, you know, especially as parents, I'm not, but you might feel that at the very beginning of the child's bilingual acquisition, you have more control on that. But when the child grow older, like especially as I said, when they enter school, you tend to, you know, lose control on that, even though you know, try very hard to provide input, maybe to do a lot of practices with the kids, but still you feel like you lose control on that part. Yeah, and no enough cultural representation of English in the curriculum. Yeah, yeah. So that's my very important role as well. And I want to like following on that, on Dina's you know, comment on that, I want to just add a little bit about the Irish here. I'm not sure whether you have, you know, acquired some knowledge about the Irish that is speaking in Ireland. That while Irish is one of the official language, you know, that is used, one of the official languages of Ireland, but not every Irish person would say they are bilingual. And Irish is the language that the kids who grow up in Ireland here, like saying the majority of them have to learn in the school. And there are actually schools in Ireland use Irish as the instruction language. However, as far as the feedback that I hear from the parents and from the kids and from, maybe college students who has been through the Irish education, like in secondary school, in primary school, they say the same thing basically about the curriculum, that even though they're taught Irish at school, they still feel they don't have that much opportunity to use that language. I think input is one part, like one aspect, and output is another aspect. So that might be different, from the English in, Egypt. I guess you would probably have more, the kids would probably have more opportunity to use English. But here, like Irish is, they don't have that much opportunity to actually use it because it's not a language that people will use to communicate, in their daily life. So that's an influential factor as well. So in the curriculum, so even though it's taught, maybe it's just, practices, vocabulary, think text, talking about the grammar, teaching the grammar, and then take exams. But, the output is not there. So the kids cannot really, develop Irish as an additional language that they would use.
Yes, I just have a comment here that
Mhm.
although like when we were in Ireland a couple of years ago, we found that the signs all written in English and in Irish,
Yeah.
and that I was actually impressed by the efforts of the government to establish and revive the language. But again, I guess that the like the younger generations and even the not only the digital natives but also the millennials and so on, all of them, they feel they don't have to talk in Irish. Like, why should I talk in Irish while
Mm.
English is my first language? So what motivates me to talk in Irish? If you get my point, yeah.
Yeah. Just as you said, like the Irish and English, right? I have it here for Trinity College Dublin. Even though I don't know how to pronounce it, I can't read it, and I don't learn Irish either. But it is, you're right, that the Irish government really invest and push a lot to the spread, the use of Irish language. But I would say the outcome now, it's still not very positive. Yeah. But it's still a good sign. I mean, like they are really pushing it, and they really want to, maintain the Irish. Okay. Yeah. So I also would like to say a little bit about, the mixed language. I think it is mentioned as well. So I think you maybe have observed yourself or experienced, and you have, heard that bilingual children do mix the language, sometimes while they're speaking. But, I just want to ask you, maybe you could think about it. Does mixed language mean confusion? Like as a bilingual language user ourselves, I mean, I use Chinese, like Mandarin Chinese and English, and I guess you use two or even more languages as well. Like you probably mix language, but does that mean that you confused about the language? And what about to the kids? Like if it's is a confusion, like if they do confused at a certain stage, but it's lasting, so is it a problem at a particular stage? I mean, in other words, when it has happened, or is it a problem that will last for quite a long time and even until adulthood? So
yes, this is true. Actually, sometimes I confuse words, and sometimes I used to. If I want to speak in Arabic, I speak in English, and then I have a mental block to 2 seconds, and then I shift to the language that I want to communicate with. So this happens a lot, especially with kids, and I think it lasts with adulthood as well. So it happens, but actually when this happens, people who are not familiar with this phenomenon, they judge you. They judge people who do this, so that they, as if they are snobbish or something, or they can't speak the mother tongue properly. So they get the idea that we don't want to communicate in the mother tongue. However, we want to speak in English so that we'll be superior or something. However, this is not the case at all. We get confused sometimes, and sometimes if you want to communicate with the language, you get to use the other language because it's easier for you, and this is how your brain functions.
Yeah.
When you were a child.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, you continue.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think you're right. Like even for child, and for us, when we switch the language or when we mix language, we maybe do it for different purposes, right? So maybe because of the other person that we're talking about, they prefer language, or if we want, the attention from the speaker of one language, then we will switch language from one to the other. And also maybe like we find it is easier to express something in one language than the other, so we choose to switch the language. So that might be the reason for children do that as well. And also for bilingual children, if they have, parents who speak 2 or more languages, their parents might mix language as well when they speak to the kids. So if the parents provide examples of mixing languages and, code switching in their input, that might influence children's output as well, right? Well, they might just, copy what their parents do or what their siblings do. Yeah. But let's say for the experimental studies, so there is no evidence that bilingualism is detrimental to individuals, and whether there will be, benefits to individuals and what benefit it actually has, we can, talk about that later on. But as I think we have discussed a lot, and I think you're all familiar with the bilingual children. So here I just want to give you a little bit background about the Ireland here. Well, for worldwide, like bilingual children nowadays are in a majority rather than a minority, right? And according to Gordon's estimation, like 50% of the world's children grow up to be bilingual. So I would say a lot of comments that you just said is definitely not a single case. I would say it's very common, in bilingual children's language development. And in Ireland, according to the 2016 census, like 13% of the population are multilingual, and O'Connor interpret this data as 3 children in our classroom are multilingual. So here they use multilingual, and you may wonder, the differences between bilingualism and multilingualism. I would say if you ask an expert in the multilingualism area, they would say, bilingual language development and multilingual language development are different. So they would against the hypothesis that bilingual children's language development in parallel with multilingual children's language development. However, when you might have already noticed that fact, is that when you read some articles, it is not rare to find the use multilingual in the topics, in their the title, but they talking about bilingual children, like children who are exposed to 2 languages only in the content. So, you know, there are people who do use multilingual and bilingual interchangeably. But since here, like we are mainly talking about bilingual children, so children who are exposed to 2 languages. So I would just use bilingual here. Okay. So I have some cases here, but I think we have discussed some cases of bilingualism already, right? But maybe we can have a look of it very quickly and to see whether you would consider them as bilingualism or not. Okay. So the first one, I think, let me see.
Yes, I think the first one is bilingualism.
Mm-hmm. The first one is bilingualism. Okay.
Again, we'll come to the idea of proficiency. So how far that person is proficient at the language to be considered a bilingual person.
Yeah, yeah.
So it has to have some sort of measurement to hold conversation. I think we discussed this yesterday, and we said that we need to know or to establish some sort of criteria how the person should be said to be a bilingual person through proficiency in the language. And we said, I think intermediate one will be bilingual. I think so. After the discussion with you and my colleagues, I think we said that an intermediate person could be considered a bilingual person. And it depends on the 4 skills, of course, not only one skill.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And for kids, I would say when in these studies, like the scholars usually use the age of exposure to decide, you know, what type of bilingualism they are. And of course, for the children's level, like the early stage of language development, so different measurements can be used. It's because their language skills, of course, as you said, 4 skills, especially the writing one, are not fully developed. So maybe at the very beginning, that would be, you know, vocabulary measures, like a vocabulary test. And then maybe at the early stage, that could be, you know, narrative, you know, discourse level, narrative measurement as well. Like there are actually different types of standardized tests or measurement for that. But I would say for like adults, like for bilingual person, you know, it's really hard to define like bilingualism at adulthood, and also sometimes it's really up to, you know, the individual's perception of their own language proficiency. So I would say for adulthood, maybe if you are confident to use 2 languages fluently, then you can say you're bilingual. But here, yeah, we can just, you know, for the cases here, we can just discuss about that. Yeah, and what about the second one? Belgian person with 1 French-speaking parent and 1 Dutch-speaking parent who learned both languages from birth.
This is, I think, definitely is a bilingual person, because
Yeah,
he
the
will
second one,
grasp.
yes, the second one,
Yes.
maybe a multilingual as well.
Because if that
If he is
person,
speaking in English medium, yes.
Yeah, or maybe a German, right? Because if this person is living in Belgium, right? English, German, French, Dutch, yeah, a multilingual, yeah. And what about the third one?
I want to add something to the second point.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I would second Yumna, as she said, multilingualism, but there should be one language preference over the other at the end of the day. I mean, this depends on the some personal factors, some educational or workplace factors, or the personal preference of the speaker himself or herself when she choose one language to be preferred over the two other languages. If I got it right.
To be honest, I I cannot really say whether it's right or wrong. I would say it exists, like what you just said, like for multilingual, language development, there might be one or even two languages that's preferred by the person, the individual, than the other. But whether it is true for every multilingual person, I don't know, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, so the preference exists anyways.
Well, I would say
this is personal. I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, if you don't mind, I ask, like, do you consider yourself to be multilingual, and do you find it it is true, like for yourself, that you have preference,
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm just wanted to know whether you draw this conclusion based on your own experience.
Yes, somehow I have my cousins. The father is Egyptian, and the mother is French, and they learn English. So at the end of the day, they have the preference for the French more than the Arabic and the English. I do not know why, but maybe this is a personal preference. I cannot even judge, but I just seek to know that the language preference exists, whether it's bilingual or multilingual.
Oh yeah, like it exists, and I would say I'm not sure what caused that. Because that might be different for each case, and we're of course we're not here to judge anyone. Like, it's if a kid grew up with more than two languages, it is not wrong, like, for them to to have preference, for sure.
Yeah.
Right, so
maybe it can be a case study somehow.
Yeah, maybe you can do that. You have access to the participants, I mean the kids, so you can do that.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
And that might, I just want to add a little bit more. So because the kids, if they're exposed to two languages, it is not 100%. A lot of studies have said that they will receive, less input for each language compared to their monolingual peers. And we can imagine that if the kids are exposed to more than two languages, 3, 4, 5, it is really hard for them to get, equal input from each language. So maybe that's one of the reasons, the different amount of input that the kids receive, for each language. And not just the amount, we're going to talk about that later. Maybe there are other factors about the input here. Yeah, so that's caused for the preference, or maybe even the different, proficiency levels. Yeah. Okay, and what about the third one?
I don't think the third one will be bilingual.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that as well, because especially when they say, you know, using just a few
phrases in Mandarin. Yeah, correct.
in Mandarin.
So let me ask you a question, please. In number one, does understanding the gist of news or radio, television, or familiar topic will be considered bilingual or no? What do you think? What do you think, actually?
Yeah, so if I use this as a case study, if I'm going to investigate this case, I wouldn't say that's a bilingualism. Yeah, I would say
Yes.
Irish will be that person's second language, but it also depends on that person. Oh, sorry, no, because it said it's grow up in an English speaking home, so that person's home language is English, and learned Irish at an otherwise English language school. So here, this is just to say that the English is the school's instruction language and Irish is just a course taught in school. So one can hold simple conversation in Irish and understand the gist of Irish news on radio because it's that gist and for familiar topics. So if I am going to do a case study or to do a research on bilingualism, I wouldn't say this is, I wouldn't count it as bilingualism.
Yes, reconsidering the first example again, I will never consider this as a bilingual person because applying this on myself, I can understand the gist of French people speaking, for example, next to me, or understanding familiar topics. However, I will never categorize myself as a bilingual person or a good person, good speaking person as French. So I don't think that will be applied. But I have another question for you, please. Do you think variety of a language, if a person is speaking the same language but with a variety of the same language, would you consider that a bilingual person or no? Because this was debatable yesterday.
Okay. Of yesterday's course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what type of what kind of variety, like what?
So for example, in Arabic we have Egyptian colloquial Arabic and standard Arabic and Fusha. We have 3 varieties. Okay. So would you consider these varieties, or knowing the 3 of them, will be a bilingual or multilingual person, or no, the variety actually considered as one mono language?
Then I want to ask, like, how variety they are, like how various they are, like how different they are.
They are different.
Yeah, they are different. So I mean the level. Yeah, because I know nothing about.
Phonologically, they are different. Semantically, they are different. Maybe syntactically, they are different.
Lexically, on the lexical level, syntactic level, basically. This is how different the Fusha and or the standard Arabic, the modern standard Arabic, and the Arabic dialects and the varieties differ from the modern standard Arabic.
Okay.
Because some theoreticians say that the variety of language considered bilingual could be considered a bilingualism, and actually when I studied 16 years ago in the university, variation of the language is not considered bilingualism.
Yeah, well, I think that will be a very interesting topic because even though you said like they are, you know, lexical level and syntactic level of differences between, you know, the 3, can I call it dialects or of Arabic, or? But we still need to know like how different they are, because I can use like the Chinese languages as an example, because in China we have Mandarin, I guess probably similar to Egypt, but we have standard Mandarin as the official language, And also we have a variety of dialects, like very different, like a large amount of dialects that are speaking in China. But there are some of them that's very close to standard Mandarin Chinese. So especially for people from north of China. So I wouldn't say they are bilingual. You know, they just speak Mandarin Chinese and with a dialect that's close enough to standard Mandarin. But for people from south of China, and you might know Cantonese, that's, you know, the dialects that people speak in the Canton area. So that's, I would say, is a language rather than a dialect. However, there is a debate on that, you know, in the, you know, Chinese linguistic area, I guess, probably similar debate that you had yesterday. But I would say Cantonese Mandarin, that would be bilingual. Yeah, but it's very much depends on, you know, how different the dialects or the, you know, the different Arabics that you described. And I think maybe it's a good question or a research topic for you to think about. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Maybe,
because
maybe I'll do with Yumna some research. Okay.
Yeah, I think it will always be debatable, you know, and it's very much depends on what research question you ask and what aspect you want to, you know, investigate. Yeah, so yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, I think the time goes really fast. Do you want to take a break now? I'm not sure, like, how long.
I guess it's better to finish 30 minutes earlier so that we actually do this normally with the second session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how it's done, like in your previous sessions. So we finished 30 minutes early. Okay. Okay, then let's continue. Yeah, as we said, I think we discussed a lot on that, and some of you also commented on the different aspects of the bilingualism. So bilingual children are highly varied, like in their language acquisition, and let's summarize them like into different but simple, you know, aspects. So the first is the context, and I think we have talked about that. You know, we saw the cases that's different contexts. It could be for bilingualism, and I think you have mentioned some of them as well. And Klein actually proposed, you know, official bilingualism and de facto bilingualism, and from the name of them, actually official bilingualism is just for, you know, some country they have more than, you know, one official languages. I put Ireland here as an example. You know, Ireland has Irish and English. However, even though Ireland is official bilingualism, Irish is not really, you know, widely spoken in people's daily life. And there are, you know, de facto bilingualism, that's the factual bilingualism, and can be highly varied, you know, for maybe different families. And we have immigrant families, you know, bilingual communities, and well, that can also, you know, bilingualism can also formed because of different family language use, you know, so that's the context. And I think we have talked about that as well, like a little bit about the age. So there are actually, you know, differences between, well, in some studies, like the sequential bilinguals and simultaneous bilinguals. And Paradis, like he considers simultaneous bilingualism refer to being exposed to two languages starting before age 3. So age 3 is a cutoff age for sequential bilinguals and simultaneous bilinguals. So for the example that we have seen here, like the case 3, let's ignore the second half, you know, about the adult part. So for that person, because that person arrived in Ireland at age 4 and are exposed to that language, to English, I would say, like mainly after age 4, then in Paradis view, then at that time, he is sequential bilinguals. But let's say if that person has a little brother who were born in Ireland, then are exposed to the 2 languages, you know, in Ireland, then in Paradis view, that, you know, little sibling, little brother or sister would be simultaneous bilinguals. However, there are other views. For example, for Baker, Baker argues that there are no exact boundaries about the age of the accusation. Yeah. So, sorry, do you want to ask something? So, raise your hand. Sorry, I don't know why my mouse can be there.
Can I
Sorry.
ask a question here if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Well, for the definition of the sequential bilinguals, the sequential, I guess. So what would be the difference between the sequential and simultaneous bilinguals and the de facto bilinguals? Because I feel that they are very close terms.
Oh, you mean the de facto ones, right?
Yeah, de facto, yes.
Yeah, so for here, the de facto is actually just the opposite to, it's the, we start with the official in pairs. So officials is, you know, those countries that have more than one official languages, but de facto is more like in fact, you know, in the country or in the community or in the family that bilingualism exists.
Yes, so it's like it's in the family, but then you actually referred to the other example that one who is raised, a person who was raised by a mother and a father who speak 2 different languages as sequential or simultaneous bilingual. So what would be the difference between the de facto and sequential and simultaneous bilinguals?
Oh, there will be difference and overlap as well. So sorry, the sequential and simultaneous are related more to the age of exposure to the 2 languages. So for this one, like if they, like that person who learned both languages from birth, then that would be simultaneous bilinguals and, you know, de facto bilingual as well. Yeah. Sorry, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the age and the context, and that, you know, would result in different or varieties in bilingual children's language acquisition. And now I would like to introduce one series here. Not just one, but the series that are related to how bilingual children represent their languages, or more like how bilingual children stored the 2 languages in their brain. And the series related to this question actually, you know, more about whether it's one system at the beginning of the language acquisition or 2 separated systems here. Okay, so I don't know whether you have seen this theory, this hypothesis before, the unitary language hypothesis that proposed by Vortula and Taschner.
For me, no.
Okay, so basically they propose like 3 stages. So they propose the unitary language hypothesis, and at the very beginning, the first stage. So they propose that the bilingual child, has one mixed language system containing words from both languages. So I put the example here. So the dog, well, apparently it's an English word, and Mao is the Chinese word, like for the cat. So instead of having dog and dog go is the Chinese word for dog in mind, instead of having this 2 vocabulary, from 2 languages in mind. So at the very beginning, the bilingual child would have dog and Mao. So we have one word, like for dog, maybe it's English, and one word for cat, maybe it's Chinese. And they don't differentiate the language. They just thought, oh, that's, one system. So that's the one mixed language system at the very beginning. And then the second stage is 2 lexical system, but 1 syntactic system. So at stage 2, they started to differentiate, the vocabulary. Now they know that dog is English word and go is Chinese word for dog, but then they start to have 1 syntactic system. So an example here is the Italian and German bilingual, like produced by that child. So is Julia Buch, forgive my pronunciation.
Yeah, Buch.
Do I pronounce this right? Yeah.
Buch, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's Buch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And Buch is book, right?
Yes, the German word for book. Yep.
Yeah, Buch.
Yeah. So that means Julia is the proper noun here, and Buch is book. And the bilingual child want to say Julia's book. Or it. So that's the stage 2. And then they propose, after development at stage 3, they have 2 lexical system and 2 syntactic system. They started to have, different systems. So that's the unitary language hypothesis they proposed. Okay. So, but then the evidence that they gave, of course, are like, examples here, and more like, code switching or a language, mixing in the child's language. Then I think you probably have observed a similar phenomenon, and we have probably talked about that. But then I would like to ask you to think, what problems do you think this theory might have? So this unitary.
Yeah,
Can
with
you,
this
can you
theory.
repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Is that my internet not stable?
Yes.
What about now?
Yeah, we can
Okay.
see and
so
hear
my
you
question
now.
is. Okay, thank you. So my problem is, what problems do you think? Sorry, my question is not my problem. My question is, what problems do you think this theory might have?
Yeah, the problem is that it would be very confusing, because the child will learn, for example, let's talk about the syntactic level. So the child at the very beginning will use the, let's say, the first language, or maybe the dominant language syntactic features. And then he or she will be will have to learn the other syntactic features for the the syntactic features for the other language that he or she didn't choose from the very beginning to be the dominant syntactic features used. So that would be very problematic, because he or she will not be able to learn the syntactic features of the other language easily. It would be very hard to shift. So yeah, I guess this is it's so hard to apply, and if it was applicable, so I don't think that the success rate would be high. This is based on my own point of view.
You mean the syntactic system, like you mean applying this theory, or for children to acquire the two?
No, in applying this theory, like as a
Uh-huh.
criticism to this theory. So yeah, this would be a problem for this. But unlike if we taught the children, if we expose the children to the real the right syntactic features of each language separately, and let them think separately with each language in its own independent syntactic and lexical features, that will be way better and way easier for them to acquire the language appropriately, at least.
Okay. Then, well, yeah, I just want to add something here. I mean, you said that the syntactic system, like the two like syntactic system, would be difficult for the children to distinguish. I would say it's this the difficulty like for the children to distinguish. I mean, that's the errors, let's say, they made, means that they have difficulty distinguish two separate systems, or
No,
that means like
no, actually, what I've meant is that they are not going to have difficulty in distinguishing the syntactic features. No, I mean, if we actually if we taught them at the very beginning, or if they acquired the syntactic feature, or sorry, syntactic system of one language rather than the two languages separately, then they would then have difficulty. But if they apply, they try to acquire the syntactic systems of the two languages separately at the same time, like simultaneously or in parallel, so that won't be a problem afterwards. They won't have at least one language interferes in the other.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned a little bit about the cross-linguistic transfer here, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to really tell the kids that this is English, or this is let's say this is German, this is Italian, this is German system and German syntactic system and Italian syntactic system, because actually especially at the early stage when children acquire, they don't know what is syntactic. They don't know what is phonological,
Yes,
right?
this is true. For that reason, it's for me, actually, I think that it's better to expose the children to the right syntax for each language separately. Like I mean, because in this theory, as far as I understood, that it enables maybe children to use maybe the lexical items, but they can mix up the syntax like for, or use the syntax of one language, applying it to another to the other language that they are acquiring. This could be normal, and this could happen actually because children come up with their own syntactic system, as we know, in the early childhood in specific. But the thing is that if this is intended and done under the supervision or monitoring or anything like that, so why would we let them do that, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and actually, like, your comments lead to the two systems later on, especially the cross linguistic influence and transfer. Okay, so yeah. What about other thoughts about this theory?
I just need to say, or I just need to ask you, do you only focus on the difficulties or the, I mean, don't you think about any of the benefits of acquiring a second language?
Oh, of course. Like, yeah, well, as I said.
Okay, is this a later question? If this is a
No.
later
I mean,
question,
like,
I can postpone my comment. If this is going to be another question at some point in your presentation, I'm going to postpone my comment on the benefits of learning another language.
Oh, no, I think maybe you can just say it now because I don't really know whether we'll have enough time to go into that in detail.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. We said that there is a challenge or a difficulty that is caused when we get to learn two different language systems, referring to the syntactic structure, vocabulary, and so on and so forth. But we have to agree to a supposition that says that second language can enhance the brain. You know that language learning helps improve people thinking and skills and also memory abilities. And I cannot ignore the fact that language centers in the brain is going to be very flexible. And learning a second language can also develop new areas of your brain and strengthen your brain's ability to focus and just to pay attention and direct your attention where it needs to go.
Oh, yeah.
So I can also draw on a theory that we have a cognitive compensation. I mean, a bilingual brain can compensate for variation by using other brain networks and connections. Where at some point, if you're not willing to learn another language,
Hello?
I guess that we lost her, the connection, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it's my problem, my internet's problem. No, hope she will.
No, we can hear you and see you clearly.
Okay, so hopefully she will maybe rejoin us, and then we can hear the rest of the comments that she wanted to add it. Yeah, I would say.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. I got disconnected. I'm really sorry.
Oh, that's no problem. That's no problem. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, I finished my comment. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would say, like, actually the comment that you just added about the the whether it's the memory ability and the attention that you just mentioned.
So but yeah, I see.
Yeah. And especially
the I see bilingualism can enhance your brain's ability for critical and enhance the networks and inside the brain, your ability. So there is a bright side for each and everything.
Yes, and I agree with you. And I would say there are many studies, like especially experimental studies, support what you just said. And of course, there is benefits and advantages about being bilingual, and not just for kids, just for studying, even for studying a second language in general. But here they propose that theory. You might feel that they only focus on the errors or the disadvantage side of the bilingualism, but they just want to expand the errors that children made, especially at the early stage. So they just wanted to know whether they made the errors because of this, unitary system, or the separated system, but because of the cross-linguistic transfer that we're going to talk about later on. So that's just at a very early stage, and of course they're going to be benefits later on. Okay. So yeah, and just a brief summarize here, and I think we have to talk about that as well, like at the very beginning or when we discuss some cases. So there are some errors like here, the mixed language, like the mix of the vocabulary, or maybe the mix of the the syntactic features or the system. So that's the problem is more like the language mixing in use, like when they speak, when they use the two languages, that means that they mix the language in their mind. Or especially for the lexical level, the lexical system, is that because the one unitary system, or is that because the limited vocabulary size that the child has? So is they don't differentiate the two systems, or it's just because they, for that specific case, they don't know the alternative word in the other language. So it's hard to tell, right? And also, I think we have mentioned that the adult code switching, like when we use two languages, we code switching for different communicative purposes. So maybe that's the case for the kids as well, and also the language mixing input that might cause the language mixing in output. Sorry, does anyone want to comment on something? Yeah, sorry, I didn't.
Yes, you can continue if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so that's the one system, and that's also two systems that are proposed by the the researcher. So the first one is the autonomous system theory, that the two languages of bilingual children develop independently and not affect each other. And the other one is the interdependent systems theory, and that actually is the most widely supported theory. Is they propose that the development of one language of bilingual children affect subsequent development on the other language. So that's where they propose cross-linguistic influence and transfer. And of course, there are positive and negative transfers about whether one language will boost the development of the other language, or one language, especially the syntactic feature of one language might hinder the development of the other language. And the example that I took here is from Ip and Matthews' study, because they studied Cantonese and English bilingual child, and they found the cross-linguistic influence from Cantonese to English is about the WH question, because in Cantonese and the same in Mandarin Chinese, we ask the WH question in this order. Is this on the what? Like what on this, sorry. Yeah, so we would ask like this on the what. We would put the WH, the what, at the end of the sentence. And they do observe, this sentence order actually appears a lot in the Cantonese English bilingual child output, like the utterance that they produced. So that's the two system theory. And I think we have talked about a little bit, like briefly talk about the cross-linguistic influence and transfer, right? And let me look at the time. I think we can do a open discussion about this question. I don't think we can go to very detail about each aspect of the influential factors for successful bilingualism, but I think we can do a discussion on that. And if you have any questions, we can do an open and free discussion as well. So for the question I have here, like what makes for success in bilingualism? It's a huge question.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very broad. It's very broad, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, as we have discussed, like individuality exists, and maybe different families would have different situation, and the educational system, different curriculum as well. But let's do some just free discussion on that to see what do you think like about the success in bilingualism. Yeah, I think Dina raised your hand, right?
Yes, man. Yes, I totally agree with you and Yomna that this question just opened the door for a very broad discussion about what makes bilingual education a successful process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see that it develops students' language and literacy proficiency in the sense that it develops sociocultural integration and a successful academic achievement. That's a very general thought, and you have to also draw.
I think we lost her again.
Yeah, the connection.
Yeah.
Hello.
Well, yeah.
Hello.
She returned back again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the interruption.
No problem.
Okay,
no
so
problem.
back to the point, we can achieve problem solving and creativity task. Okay, so people who speak more than one language can process information more easily and efficiently, other than those who are monolingual. So as I mentioned before, it can enhance your brain power and expose you to other cultures. So we have the idea of sociocultural awareness or representation. And it can also have a very important benefit. I mean, it can improve your competitiveness in the job market. So if we have two people, one is monolingual and the other is bilingual, they are applying for a job in a multinational company, which one is going to be accepted more than the other? Of course, it will, the job post will go to the person who has more than one language, more than one culture, and so on and so forth. Okay. So this is briefly my idea about being successful if you have more than one language.
That's how important to be successful in bilingualism and multilingualism, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's especially the job market part. I think it's also motivate more and more people to learn a second language, like even though at adulthood. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So
thank you, man.
No problem. Does anyone else want to say something or comment on something?
Yeah, well, actually, I think I have replied to that before, and when I discussed the idea of like the theory of unitary, I guess. Yeah. So yes, I guess that I've discussed this earlier. So yeah, it's a relative point. A point. This point is related to this discussion, like success in bilingualism.
Yeah. Okay. And anybody else? Or I think we can briefly talk about then have you observed successful bilingual, children, or successful, like children who grow up with two languages and then still be able to, use these two languages in their adulthood? And do you think, or have you observed, what factors might cause the success in bilingualism?
Yeah, well, actually, in our community, we do have various success stories in being bilingual. So we, for example, are an example for that, because we can speak Arabic. This is our native language and mother tongue, and we're almost native speakers of English. So yes, we could be considered successful bilingual speakers or bilinguals.
So it's more like you're living in a community that two languages are used, and two languages, like, or more languages of both, they all have like high repetitions in the community as well, and maybe in the education system that two languages are used.
Yeah, English and Arabic, yes, especially in the educational system. And we do have international schools and national schools, which the first language used, or the language of instruction, is English. And basically all the subjects are taught in English rather than in Arabic. So yes, we are in a community that English is considered the second language, and we have like most of the population can, or at least 50% of the population can speak English as a second language besides Arabic.
Yeah. I ask that because I think the education system is very important, like for the success in bilingualism in the later stage. I mean, well, even though we have talked about, about the problems of the English, maybe in the curriculum, like the cultural part, but I still think it is crucial, for success in bilingualism. Because my area is about, the English Mandarin speaking children who are growing up in Ireland. And the problem they have is the reduce of Mandarin input as the child, grow older, like when they enter school. So I would say it's the education system. Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, I see someone raise your hand. Do you want to say something?
I would like to speak about cultural sensitivity. So if they are learning two languages, and each language is the product of a different culture, so if the interaction between the two cultures is dialogic, no hostility, especially in post-colonial contexts, I think that would further improve the acquiring of a second language.
Yeah, I think that would apply to the education system as well, right? Yeah. For the culture part. Yeah. Okay. So any other comments or questions?
No, Yeah, everything was clear. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I didn't really finish the slides that I prepared, because I think you're very, engaged and interactive and provide me, the information or the knowledge about, your community, about your language that I didn't know before. So thank you as well.
Thank you very much, Nan, for such an informative session. I really enjoyed the topic really much with you.
Yeah, okay, I'm glad.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I have the slides on the the website, and you can download, and I put some readings on that website as well. So if you're interested to this topic and want to explore more, you could consult that.
Thank
the
you.
website.
Thank you so much. Definitely we will do that. Thank you.